Yêu áo. One AI too much play.
Put washing out first.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm going to turn that light off above my head. It's making me look like an angel with a halo. Can't have that. There we go, a little less angel. How's that?
Stunning.
Hello, Sonia. Oh, you look like you're on my favourite beach there, Sonia. And she's got a friend with her on the beach. Unmute yourself, Sonia. Tell me who your friend is there.
You're on mute.
I'm on mute.
No, Sonia's on
I
mute.
was going to say.
Hello, sorry about that. Yeah.
Hey, nice to see you.
So we've got Armina here.
Amina.
Nice
Good to see you, Amina.
you, Likewise. You might have to come in.
Oh, we're a threesome here.
I got into trouble one day for saying threesome in a particular health environment, and I thought from then on I've been saying trifecta. Trifecta. And who's your third arm there?
Lavika is my colleague in risk and compliance,
Oh, thanks. Great.
and Armina is sort of more at the service level.
Oh, well, it's fabulous to see a team here.
Yeah.
Speaking of teams, I can see two of my teammates. Lisa's there. Many of you have met Lisa before. Joining us from where today, Lisa?
Beautiful rain-soaked Newcastle. So I said to Marie, I will probably be skipping out early so that I can get myself home safely. And yes, Sonia, it's me. I'll talk to you on Monday.
Putting a face to a name, even if it's an E face.
Yeah.
Good, isn't it? Another lovely face that I always like to see is my colleague Jill. Wave, Jill.
Hi,
Where are you joining us from, Jill?
the beautiful Delamere.
Delamere. People
Yes.
might be thinking,
Where is that?
Please explain.
we're on the map.
Yeah, down on nearly near the tip of where you go off from South Australia to Kangaroo Island. On the tip of the Fleurieu Peninsula, if that makes.
Like that. That's a lovely place to be. If you haven't been down there to the lovely Fleurieu Peninsula or to Kangaroo Island, you must get down there because there's lots of vineyards. And there's Jill, my lovely colleague Jill. There we are. Who else have we got here? Kath Stewart. Hello, Kath. You look like you might be on the same beach as my lovely Sonia, Armina, and I want to say Elavika. I'm wondering if
Lavika.
Lavika.
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hello, Kath. Where are you joining us from today, Kath? Apart from
Catholic
the topic?
Care in the central west of New South Wales, where it's pouring with rain all day.
There's lots of rain
Yeah.
today. Don't blame me for putting yourself on a tropical beach there.
Yeah,
Margie. Hello, Margie. Where are
Margie's
you joining us
joining
Hey
from?
Marie.
Tell everyone where you are today.
So I'm in my home on our farm near Forbes, and I work for Catholic
farm
Care,
near
looking in
Forbes,
Forbes with
oh.
Kath.
Great, Kath and Margie joining us from Catholic Care out a farm near Forbes. That's so secret. Lots of farms out there.
It's actually not that secret.
No, I know. But I'm imagining it's still very green out there then. Is that a good thing to be imagining?
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful here, except we're at the front end of a mouse plague, so it's very unpleasant at the
Oh.
same time.
Wow.
Very. I think if we get time at the end of our special hour today, you should tell us your worst mouse plague story. God, freak everyone out. Make us glad to be where we are and not there. Who else can I
Yes,
see? I can see James, our special guest VIP today. James is the director at BNG SPP Online. I know everybody knows what that means. Many of you have been making very, very good friends with the BNG portal. And today you get to make very, very good friends with James, who has offered to support us as a group of assessors, but then has also offered to support you as a group of client organisations. So we're all in it together, aren't we, James?
Sure are.
Good-o, with lots of tips, special little things that you might not know. And Emma's thinking, oh, great. If only that could have been what we were talking about 6 months ago, because guess what? Emma is ready to have her assessment next week.
Ooh.
I am. I actually don't even have time for this meeting right now, Marie, because I need to be preparing for you for your visit next week.
No, you don't. As
I'm
long as you've
just
got some
joking.
herbal tea. Have you got some herbal tea in the cupboard?
I've got lots of herbal tea.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that surely is the only last important thing you have to do apart from be here with friends. Carolyn, I did see Carolyn there. Carolyn is probably just ducked off to get a cuppa. She's joining us from Armidale Women's.
Carolyn's on mute.
I know, I just feel like she'll work that out. Yeah.
Carolyn couldn't find her glasses.
Is it? My glasses. I can't find my glasses. What a common thing for women and men of our failing eyesight. And Beatrice, I'm sorry that I'm not seeing your face. I'm hoping to see your face, but if we can't, just type to me. Ah, there it is. No, that's Kay's face. Oh, you swapped boxes on me.
I'm just wondering, you know, I mean, I'll ask the girls when they can understand the question, but whether we just got them to get all their documents and
I don't know. There sort of sounds to be noise coming out of Carolyn. She's not really talking.
No, I'm not saying anything. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, sweetness. That's lovely. Kay is here from. Kay, tell them where you are. Where you from?
I'm from Domestic Violence Service Management in Sydney. Am I the only one from Sydney?
No, we are too.
We're from Sydney.
James is from Sydney. Sonia from Youth Off the Streets is from Sydney.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Isn't that nice? You've got some company there. And Beatrice Hobson, where are you joining us from? I wonder, can she type to me in chat and let me know?
B's from B&G as well.
That's
Marie.
awesome, James.
Yeah. But I'm not too sure. I think she might not have a camera on her computer.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We'll just imagine B's face. There we go. Nice to have you here.
Here we go. Here she is.
Oh, magic! Out of the box.
I don't have a camera on my computer, so
It's nice that you're there.
Yeah. We don't want to breach any COVID protocols, so I think B's got to go back to her desk now.
It's all right. You've got one of my favourite Sydney Nolans on the wall behind you there, James. I just noticed. I always like to look into people's rooms and see what they've got.
Yeah, there's no hidden message with that Sydney Nolan picture.
Nosy, Marie.
I know, I am. I know.
Yeah, I've got an original.
Ooh. Now, who's painted that for you, Kay?
That was my son's kindy class.
That is nice. I know someone had a nice kinder or similar kid painting on their wall. It might have been, I don't know who it was, last time we were together. All right, let's officially open this up. Welcome everyone to our third on the wire. If you've been to all three, give yourself a little woo, I'm learning lots. If you haven't been to all three, I know that you've listened to the recording. I know that's what you do on Saturday night, like me. No, just joking. And it is so lovely to have James here, because I've given James probably about 15-20 minutes to answer questions and give you his golden tips for using that portal. And we should think about other guests, other people that we'd like to pull in and hear from whilst we have our opportunity to get together. I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the beautiful Biripi country. So you know where I am, don't you? I'm in Port Macquarie, and you are, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the various lands that we're meeting on today. If you'd like to type to me in chat, if you know the traditional owners of the land that you're on, I'd love to have you share that with me. I would like to acknowledge the elders, past, present, emerging. I'd like to acknowledge the pain and sorrow of the stolen generation and the impact of colonisation on Aboriginal culture, and particularly appreciate the rich contribution that Aboriginal culture has made in my life and potentially your lives as well. So thank you so much for being here. Firstly, just before James, I did promise he could go first, but then I said, oh, Lisa, it sounds like you need to go first too, because she needs to get home. And Lisa has been super helpful for all of us putting together our access to all of the resources that we've been sharing on the wire. So take it away, Lisa.
Okay, super. Can you allow me to share the screen though? Can you do that? So One of the tasks that I have been looking at is our website and being able to have one common theme. I thought maybe we could have a Slack group, but then that's something else that we need to organize, and it's, you know, it can be a little bit challenging. So I have now been able to put things on the Highwire website that you will want. And so when we send out the link to the recording of this, because we'll do that again, I'll include your password because we have restricted it to Highwire ACES clients. So I'll just, can you see that there now?
Just try that again, Lisa.
The website, let's see, share screen. Let's see. So do I go to share my screen?
Go to share screen first and then
Advanced.
click on the website screen that you'd like to share with everyone.
Okay, it's not giving me a share screen option.
Do you need to accept host first? No? I will share it for you if you like. Do you want me to? I'll share the website screen with you if you like. Better get it open first. There we go. You tell me what you'd like me to do. Go to resources. Lisa's got an unstable connection today. I might just. So I've clicked onto the resources, Lisa. No, it's all a bit jumbly.
Yep. Okay, so go down to the bottom one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so when you click on resources, you'll get a login. It'll ask you for a password. And I've just popped the password into the chat. So the password down the bottom on that ACES, Highwire ACES client resources is Highwire with a capital H, ACES, all capital. That's name of those.
Lisa, I'm sad to say that your connection is just horrible. It's making you sound like one of those underwater robots. I'm just having a look in chat to see if there's any. Okay, Margie, thanks for letting me know about that. I was just checking chat to see if there was anything in there. So just to help Lisa out, to let you know that when you go to the Highwire website, you'll click on resources up here. You'll go down to Highwire Assess Client Resources. You'll get to see the video recordings, and down the bottom you'll get to see the resources from the
Oh, right. They're the ones that we've done.
from the on the wire meetings that we share with you. We generally share about 3 or 4 resources each time we come together, and that's where you'll be able to find them. Type to me in chat if you've got any questions about how to locate those resources. Those of you who attended the last 2 will have been sent those resources, but if you'd like to access them, they are there for you. I just wanted to thank Lisa for the effort that she went to put those, to put that page together for us, and to protect it, you know, to make it something special for our clients, because we didn't just want everyone to be able to have those things, because we really value you more than everyone. More than everyone else. So it should, the password will be in chat there for you. And just to verbally say it for people who are watching the recording in case they can't see what's in chat, it is Highwire with a capital H and then ASES in capitals, ASES in capitals. There it is again. So here's my reaction for Lisa. One of those, but also one of these, because she's a legend. She helps me a lot. All right. I know that some people have turned off their video because their internet's a bit unstable because of all the weather that's around. So if you can bring your face, bring your face. If you can't, I understand that there's often challenges. And Lesky, am I saying that correctly? I'm trying to, has joined us as well from women's, help me out.
Community shelters, I think, isn't it?
That's right, women's community shelters. Is that you helping me out with that, James?
Sure was.
That's fantastic. Well done. I can use someone with a memory like that on my team. All right, I'm handing it over to James now. Thanks, Liska. I really appreciate you doing that for me. James knows you quite well, Liska. Thank you for joining us today. A reminder to everyone that we are recording just so that we can share it. We don't share it with anybody else. But don't let that make you afraid to ask really great questions.
No, that one, no.
Handing it over to you, James. Thanks very much for being here.
Okay, terrific. Well, let's see if we can share my screen to start off with. Hopefully you can all see that. Is that okay?
I can.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm assuming pretty much everyone on the call today is familiar with SPP, so I'm not going to go through too much basic stuff at all. I just thought, as you suggested, Marie, we just cover off a couple of handy tips. So just a couple of ideas to run past people to make sure people are aware of a couple of different things that you can do that can make your life a little bit easier when you're using SPP. But in case there's anyone on the call who is thinking, I've never heard of SPP, I don't know what you're talking about, I might just give the sort of 1 minute explanation as to who we are and sort of where we fit into the general scheme of things. So we have this online standards compliance platform called SPP, but people might be more familiar with SPP because we've got tailored versions of SPP, like the SHS quality portal. So a lot of those New South Wales homelessness providers will be using that, which we've put together, with Homelessness New South Wales, SHS Industry Partnership and DCJ. But also we've got a whole range of other tailored versions of SPP around the country with different industry sector peak bodies or government departments. So in South Australia, we've got the relatively new DHS quality portal, which is sponsored by obviously DHS, and that's focused for funded organisations in South Australia, where the department's kindly providing that for free for smaller organisations. And then, a whole host of other tailored versions of SPP, like the NDS quality portal that some might be familiar with, which we have in place with National Disability Services, or there's the AXA quality portal in place with AXA, etc. And we've got a number of other portals in place with different government departments. So without going into too much more detail on that. So what I wanted to do was just to jump in and have a look at a dummy account in SPP. This is not a real organisation, as its name probably suggests, ABC Community Services. I should point out, for those that are not familiar with it, this hypothetical organisation has a multi-service account, and that's where they can centrally sort of assess and monitor multiple services across ABC Community Services. So they might have a homelessness arm, disability arm, aged care, home care, whatever it might be. And that way each of those services can have their own segregated compliance account, and they can invite in the staff for their area into their segregated account. It sits within the overall corporate account. But let's just jump in and have a quick look at this account here. So we're landing on the home page, and I'm assuming everyone's fairly familiar with SPP, so I'm not going to go through too much of the basics. But just one handy tip I want to remind people of, which sometimes it sort of sounds, overly simple to even say this, but it's very easy to work in multiple tabs within the platform. So I can right-click with my mouse and click on different tabs within the platform, and by right-clicking, it gives me the option to open a link in a new tab. And what that means is, I can toggle around the platform very easily without having to constantly open and close the same tab that I'm in. So you'll find you'll navigate a lot more quickly around the platform. Here's my landing page when I log in. If I want to invite in other users, I can go here. There's my home page. There's the long list of standards in SPP. I can go straight to my documents library or wherever I want to go. So remember to right click and open up multiple tabs, because it's going to make your life easier. Now, again, this may sort of sound overly simplistic for those that are familiar with SPP, but we do like to encourage people using SPP to favourite standards. And there's a couple of simple reasons for that. It, again, will make life easier to navigate around the platform. So we can, favourite the ACNC's governance standards, or favourite the aged care standards, or maybe favourite, the Australian Service Excellence standards. So by clicking on those little star icons, all these different sets of standards will now appear back on my homepage. So if I scroll to the bottom of my homepage, here's a couple of different things that I've favorited here. And I can add more things to my favorites to my homepage, or I can remove them. If I decide that, we're already addressing the ACNC's governance standards, I can click on remove from my standards, so it will no longer appear on my homepage. But there's another reason or two why you might want to favorite standards in SPP. And that is because, for example, if I want to go to my standards action plan, for example. So hopefully people on this call will be familiar with the standards action plan in SPP. So the standards action plan is basically a list of all the gaps that we identify on the back of our self-assessment work. When I go to the standards action plan, my favourite standards appear at the top of the drop-down list of standards in the platform. So it's a bit sort of cumbersome if you've got to scroll through over 100 different self-assessments trying to find the standard that's relevant for you. If you favourite your standards, then immediately they appear at the top of the list. So again, it just makes life a little bit easier when you're using the platform. But another really important thing when you favourite standards as well is that helps us to understand what's important to you. So if there's some important development going on in aged care or Australian Service Excellence standards or NDIS or whatever it might be, we will tailor our comms, some sort of messaging or some sort of SPP alert to those that have favoured a certain set of standards, or maybe those that sit within a certain portal. So if you're in the AXA quality portal, which is obviously focused on aged care, something important is happening in terms of the aged care quality standards, or we've got a new resource or a new self-assessment in relation to clinical governance in aged care or something, we will send out an alert to those people who effectively, made it obvious that they're interested in aged care. So it's just worthwhile favouring the things that are important to you, because it'll help us to, get the right messaging through to you guys, and also not send you things you don't want. Now, another important thing I want to show everyone as well is in the Documents tab, there's just a couple of handy tips here. So first of all, I thought people might be interested to see when we are loading up documents into the platform, there's a couple of ways you can do that. So while you're actually self-assessing against a particular set of standards like ACES, for example, you can load up one document at a time while you're actually self-assessing. But what can be more efficient is to pre-populate your document library. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So we go into the Documents tab just here. We click on Add Documents. And what I want to show you, two things here. Oh, hang on a second. Let me see if I can just get back. Just want to get me back into the platform. I'm on my, bear with me a moment. Here we go. Okay, so in the Documents tab, and let me show you how we can just bulk upload. I probably won't upload too many, but if we just want to upload, let's say 5 docs, we can drag and drop them in here. And then probably some of you think, yeah, I'm already familiar with that. That's nothing terribly new for me. But what we've also done is added in this automatically name all documents using the file name. So if we click on that, that then automatically names the documents based on whatever the file name was originally, when I pulled it up from my computer folders. If you don't want to use the computer name, you can, go and type over that name. But that just might make life a little bit easier. If you're bulk uploading 10 docs at a time, you can auto name them, so you don't spend a whole lot of time just retyping the exact name. So hopefully, just a simple little tip there for you on how to, more efficiently use your document library and to load up documents. The other thing I want to make sure that people are aware of as well, which is a handy tip, and we kind of often just assume that everyone's aware of things like this, but let's say, here we've got our client rights charter, and we might have linked that to, a certain set of standards. if we update that document, and that evidence document is already linked to a couple of places, let's say in the aged care standards, for example, we can edit, replace that doc. So effectively replace the old client rights charter with the new updated version of the client rights charter. And in doing so, straight away, wherever the old client rights charter had been linked to, it'll immediately be replaced with the new client rights charter. So that's just an efficient way of, rather than deleting something and having to go back into the, the self-assessment or the set of standards concerned, and then relink the new updated doc, you just do an edit replace. Much more efficient in terms of maintaining that currency of your evidence. The other thing I want to point out as well, which I assume probably most people will be aware of, and that is that when you're adding evidence documents into the platform, it doesn't necessarily have to be, Word, Excel, PDF, PowerPoint, whatever it is. It can also be a hyperlink. Again, I'm probably stating the obvious to many people on this call, but yes, rather than loading in your 10 megabit annual report, you might just say, I'm going to load in my annual report, and this is the hyperlink to my, organisational website where the annual report resides, and that way, it can be easier just to load that in. And when I say loading in a hyperlink, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hyperlink to a public website, like your organisational website. It might be a hyperlink to your intranet. It might be a hyperlink to your external documentation management system, like SharePoint. So you can use those URLs, as linked evidence within the platform. Obviously, you need to bear in mind that a system like your intranet or SharePoint's it's going to be a secure system. So if you invite in someone like Marie to access that particular document, she'd need to be inside your secure network or have some sort of temporary network permission to then access that particular hyperlink. But it's worthwhile, being aware of that. The other benefit of, if, for example, you were to use a SharePoint URL or some other cloud-hosted documentation management system URL to that document, if you then go into SharePoint and you update the underlying evidence document, but you don't change the name of the evidence document, straight away the evidence in SPP will be up to date. However, if you go and update the underlying evidence document in SharePoint and you change the name of that document, that's going to change the URL, in which case you'd need to come back into URL come back into SPP and say, okay, my annual report was previously at the Sydney Morning Herald website, and now I might change that to whatever the correct website is. Let's put in the Australian Financial Review as our correct evidence URL, which obviously wouldn't be, but just for hypothetical purposes. Now, a couple of, and apologies if I'm sort of jumping around with a whole lot of random tips here, but hopefully if people on the call are using SPP already, you'll be keeping up with me. Another thing I want to point out is the search function in SPP. So there's a couple of different places where we can search for things in the platform. So I'm just going to point some of those things out. So if we come to the standards tab here, where we have the long list of 100 plus standards or self-assessments in the platform, if you're looking for something specific, sure, you can go and look under the national standards heading or the state and territory standards. But if you want to do a shortcut and think, okay, I want to find the national principles for child-safe organisations, it can be quicker just to type in child, and then that way anything with children in its name is going to pop up. So you've got the national principles for child-safe organisations, the childcare standards, New South Wales child safe standards, New South Wales child safe standards for permanent care, Vic child safe standards, etc., etc. So the search function, we've got a search function in the long list of standards, search function in the document library when you're searching for your own evidence documents. There's a search function in the reading room. It's the same logic with the search function. So again, what I want to emphasise with this search function is if you're looking for a particular evidence document in your library, don't try and load up the entire document name, because the search function is not like Google. Google's a smart algorithm style research engine whereby if you come up with a search name, it will look for anything aligned to that name. The way in which the search function works in SPP is it's looking for an exact word. If you're looking for the annual report, you don't even need to type in annual report. You just go, Daniel or just ANN, and it'll capture anything with that sequence of letters or that word. You know, if you want to type in, you know, you look for privacy, you don't even need to type in the whole word privacy, but you just type in PRIV and you'll find, you know, that particular evidence document of yours in your document library. Similarly, when we go to the reading room, there's a search function here as well. If you're looking for something, yes, you know, you can go and look for one of our policy templates or one of our info sheets or whatever it might be in the reading room here, and you can think, okay, I'm looking for something that's under HR or it's under safety or governance or something, but it might just be easier to say, again, I'm looking for something in relation to complaints. So I can just go and type in COMPL, don't even need to type the whole word complaint in, and then that will quickly capture anything, you know, with that combination of letters or that word in the name of the resource that sits in the reading room. So again, hopefully that's a, you know, handy little tip for you. What I might also show you as well, actually, is if we go into any particular self-assessment. So let's just jump into the self-assessment for the National Principles for Child Safe Organisations. A lot of organisations don't always realise this when they're using SPP. If we just click into the very first assessment module or quiz under Standard 1 for the National Principles for Child Safe Organisations, you'll see here the default appearance is you just see all the questions that we ask. However, you can come to this filter box just here. So rather than looking at all questions, you can look at full details, and then you'll see any resources that we've linked to the self-assessment itself. So here you can see, you know, under the first question, we've linked a child safe policy template, a child safe risk management template, a risk management policy template, a general risk management policy template, and a template child safe code of conduct. So it's just useful if you want to quickly have a look at all the different resources that might be linked to a particular quiz or assessment module, you know, click on full details. It defaults to, as I said before, it normally just defaults to the questions. So when you come in here, you think, oh, okay, there's all the questions. And we find a lot of people aren't aware that there's a whole lot of cool linked resources. Of course, if you answer no to a question, then that resource will pop up. But sometimes it's just easier to filter under full details and immediately see all those different things. Now, what else can I show you? Quickly, again, if we just sort of go backwards, right to the very first page that we were having a look at. So this is where you land when you first log in. Just want to remind everyone again that you can invite in as many users as you want into the platform. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, you just come in here. You need to be an administrator to invite in other staff members. But if you are an administrator, it's just simply a case of, you know, typing their email address and then nominating them as a fellow administrator, a user, or a reviewer. And to that end, it's worth pointing out, yes, you can invite reviewers directly into your organisational account if you so choose. But what we've set up with, you know, quite a few reviewers like Highwire is we've set up Marie's own reviewing area in SPP. And one of the reasons for that is that as people may be aware, your email address is your unique login ID. So if you've used your email address as a login ID for your own organisational account, that means if some other organisation tries to invite in your email address, it won't work because the system's saying, oh, no, that email address is already linked to this particular account. So when it comes to, you know, someone like Marie, who obviously reviews lots of different organisations, once she's been invited in by one organisation, other organisations can't invite her in unless she's deleted from the system. So what we've done is we've set up Marie's own reviewing area. So if you'd like your account to be reviewed by Marie, let us know and we will link your account to Marie's reviewing area within SPP. We won't do that unless you give us permission. But if you do that, yeah, we'll just link your account straight through to Marie. And once, you know, that audit's finished, you know, we can then, you know, unlink the two of you. Now, a couple of other things. Again, apologies if I'm jumping all over the place, Marie. I just sort of wrote down a whole bunch of handy things to do. So actually, yeah, let's just have a quick look at if you want to see how you're tracking against peers. It's worthwhile just knowing that you can look at a progress graph for a particular set of standards. Now, obviously in this account, we had, it's a demo account where we had no progress against the ACNC's governance standards. But when you come in here, you can see against those 6 standards that the average score in SPP is quite high. So, most orgs are sort of, looks like 90 odd % or so against the self-assessment for the ACNC governance standards. So for any set of standards, you can get one of these peer benchmarking graphs, and you can see the definition of the average score is SAs in the same portal. So that's service accounts in the same portal. So what that means is if you're in the SHS quality portal and you're self-assessing against ACES certificate, you could have a look at the same graph for ACES certificate and say, well, how are we tracking against other organisations in the SHS quality portal against this particular set of standards? So that could be useful for you. Another thing, again, I might point out, again, apologies if I'm jumping around in the pages, skipping all over the place. I hope I'm not losing you too much. What I wanted to just point out really quickly is for each set of standards, you've got this drop-down menu here. So for each set of standards on the homepage, you can download your action plan, your list of actionable items, a list of all your no answers from your self-assessment against the set of standards concerned. So we can download our action plan for the Australian Service Excellence Standards, or we've also, on the menu list, we've got the ability to open up our evidence pack for any set of standards in the platform. We've also got the ability to open up a standards report. And again, like I just showed you, you can also view your progress graph if you want to benchmark against your peers. So, here's the evidence pack. We haven't done any work in this demo account, so there's nothing too exciting to show you. But I just want to point out again these 2 summary reports. There's the high-level assessment report and the standards report. And I wanted to just go into one bit of detail around the standards report. So the standards report, this is for the Australian Service Excellence Standards. So we go into the standards report, which is more detailed. It lists every single one of the ACES requirements, and says whether you're incomplete, i.e. we haven't started yet, or we're met, partly met or not met. But I want to show you this green button in the top right-hand corner, which is download key. Because if you're working against a mapped set of standards in SPP, I just want to point out, if we download the key, that's the key to the mapping for this particular set of standards. So the key says, within my self-assessment in SPP, through the mapped self-assessment in SPP, how have I met this particular requirement? So if we look at standard 1.1 around strategic planning, and we look at requirement number 1, the roles and values of the organisation are clearly identified and communicated. When we come to the key basically unpacks where we have addressed this particular requirement. So as I said, the very first requirement is the role and values of the organisation are clearly identified and communicated, and that is in the SPP assessment module called Organisational Values. And I'll get to that in a second. Second requirement, planning is informed by review processes that identify threats, areas for improvement, ... That is met in the assessment module called Strategic Direction. So if we just come back to our evidence pack, or just, if we just jump straight into these first 2 assessment modules around organisational values and let's say strategic direction, you can see the questions that you've worked through in relation to addressing these particular requirements or indicators in the Australian Service Excellence Standards. So, organisational values takes you through a bit of a sort of educative journey around the types of things you need to think about in terms of organisational values. This next module around strategic direction, key considerations around, strategy and planning, etc. And that is how that cross-mapping is working within SPP. We're getting organisations to work through a series of mapped self-assessment modules. So when you answer this half dozen or 8, 10 questions around strategy, you're able to simultaneously meet multiple sets of standards where there are core requirements relating to strategy or relating to your organisational values or, mission or whatever it might be. So anyhow, that's hopefully useful for those that weren't aware of that. So that key exists in the standards report. You can get to it, straight from your homepage, you can get to the standards report, or from the evidence pack, you can get to the standards report. And then once you're in the standards report, you can download that key, which unpacks that mapping in SPP. How am I going for time, Marie? I hope I'm not boring everyone senseless here.
No, but I think it might be a good place now to get people to ask any questions that they might have, so we can get a bit targeted, because I'm going to be finishing off the session today with some practical internal auditing sort of tips for people. So questions could come now via chat. Voices are better, but could come via chat if you prefer, for James, about the portal.
I have one question. When we were on the graph where we can compare our performance with others, what exactly that 80 and 100, what exactly, and how do we track, how do we measure the performance? Based on what? Is it on evidence pack?
No. So that's a really good question. So when we're saying benchmark yourself against your peers, that's based on your answers to the self-assessment questions. So you need to be careful around that, because the way in which you answer questions is, you get asked a series of questions around whatever the themes might be, and arguably you could go and write yes to everything and you get a terrific high score. But when you get interviewed or audited by Marie, she might have a totally different interpretation as to how you're tracking. So I just want to point out that benchmarking against your peers is based on your self-assessment versus their self-assessment around how they think they're tracking. And the way in which the scoring works in the platform is for every single one of those questions that you answer, it's a simple 1-point answer for a yes or no question. Or if it's a series of checklist items, if you have 3 or 4 or 5 checklist items, there's 1 point for each checklist item. And then it's just a basic mathematical score around total number of questions, what's your score in terms of your percentage progress against that particular self-assessment. That's not a compliance score. We're not, making some sort of value judgment as to whether or not you're compliant with the standards. That's your own interpretation based on how you answer those questions.
Okay.
That was a good question.
Yep.
That was a good, Andrew, I've got another question relating to those graphs. Is there any way we can find out how many of our peers are reporting, self-assessing against that standard?
That is an excellent question. It's probably best to pose that question to us, because we can indicate to you, how many particular organisations might be in that particular portal. And bear in mind, I'm not too sure, every single entity on this call as to which portal they're in. But one thing you need to be careful about is, let's say you're in the homelessness portal, the SHS quality portal, it probably makes the best sense to benchmark against your peers against the main set of compliance requirements for that cohort. So that's obviously going to be the Australian Service Excellence Standards, or potentially the old New South Wales SHS standards, because that's the key focus for that particular cohort or group of organisations. Whereas if you're in, for example, our NDS quality portal, it would make more logical sense that you'd be benchmarking, against your peers in relation to the NDIS practice standards, for example, because that's probably the main thing that most of those organisations are self-assessing against.
Great. Kay's got a question.
I've got a question. Yeah, James, can you just perhaps talk about that comments tab and ways of using it?
Yeah. Okay. So if I click on comments, and unfortunately I don't have many comments just here, I might actually be able to give you, I've got a feeling if I go into the aged care quality standards, I'll be able to give you a better example as to how that might work. Because I'm just in the dummy account where I actually haven't done any work at the moment. I'll just shut down a couple of tabs so it's not too confusing. So if I come down here, see now I'm in the evidence pack area specifically for the aged care quality standards in this demo account. And then it just so happens that I've pre-populated some dummy comments in here. And this is where you can, add in as many comments as you may want. Obviously, you can see these are not real comments. You can load those in. You can download those comments into Microsoft Word. But also, when you generate your summary reports, so if we look at our assessment report for the aged care quality standards, it will then capture any comments that we might have added in that comment section. The other thing to bear in mind,
it is just like a long script of comments that you just add to. It doesn't attach them to anything in particular. Is
No,
that?
yeah, that's correct.
Right.
And that's where what we find, because obviously, you know, it can be pretty important to try and provide, you know, Marie or your various auditors or assessors with more context around, you know, how you might be approaching a particular set of standards. You know, the other thing that, you know, a number of organisations do is they might actually maintain an overarching corporate narrative document, like a Word doc, where they're just capturing, you know, qualitative comments in that. And then they could load that in as an additional bit of evidence, maybe under Standard 1, you know, just as an additional reference that you know, perhaps goes into more detail. With this comments section here, it's deliberately left, you know, as sort of open text.
Yeah.
And it's not saying this is exactly how you should populate this. You know, you might, rather than having Standard 1, Standard 2, you might have, you know, requirement 1.1.1, requirement 1.1.2. You know, you can go down to whatever breakdown you want. It's just set up as pretty basic open-ended text.
Marie, have you got any?
I want to add something there about that, because it's super helpful when we download the assessment report. If there is a little bit of contextual narrative in there, it's super helpful. But even if there's page numbers in there, you know, so if you're saying, oh, you know, here's a WHS policy, if you put, you know, some more direction in there about where we can locate a particular piece of evidence that you want us to look at, that's also a good thing to use the comments for. Right. Or reference a case study, or let us know that you're going to tell us about this on site, or let us know that we can view your register when we get, you know, to your site. That's just really helpful to use the comments. Actually,
what you've raised an interesting point there, Marie, which I wanted to point out to people as well, which is that, so we're under, you know, workplace health and safety in ACES. I'm not too sure if I've got a workplace health and safety policy in here, but let's just see. There we go. So if we link that, we could say, write a little note there, because, you know, the underlying document could actually be quite long, for example. So you can see here when we link that in, there's our workplace health and safety policy, and we put in a reference there for Marie to help.
Oh, that's great.
That's not in the comments.
That's when you're you're attaching that to the document. You're putting it
correct.
Next to the
so there's just an opportunity to put a little note there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just show that again, please?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, so when I go to link evidence,
yeah,
let's just say I want to link my records management policy, and then it says here reference page or section.
Yeah.
But you can put in whatever you want. You know, it's really up to you as to, you know, what sort of comment you want to give to Marie there.
And Marie, is that okay when we're uploading, like our P&Ps, for example?
Yeah, that's much more helpful than what most people would do. Most people would just put the document there, and if it's a 60-page document, we're kind of going to go, I wonder which bit this is, and it seems to not be valid. So that's really helpful.
Okay, good.
Can I ask, like, when you're looking at it, Marie or James, whoever wants to answer this, does it look like that? Is that what you see when you go in and look at? So if we share access with you, do you see the answer and then the links like that?
Yep. We'll see that it'll say there are 2 evidence documents attached, but our general practice would be to download the one of the reports there, the assessment report most usually, because then we can see the evidence actually linked to the indicator, whereas here we've got to move, you know, between screens.
Right.
So yeah, we can look at this when you, for example, if you say to me, I've done Standard 1, could you go in there and have a look? You know, I would generally go in here because I can see everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
also, so when we go to work health and safety, you can see here, here's our records management policy, and you know, I just want to point out, there's our comments just there. So this is in the evidence, the summary evidence pack area. Yep. And then if you look at the assessment report that Marie was referring to, again, just want to, you know, point out how those just the document names pop up, records management policy, work health and safety policy, but you can see my name is James is popping up just here. This is just a high level summary report listing all the names of documents in here. And then actually the other important thing that's worth pointing out.
How do you do that report? How did you get to that report?
So I'm in the evidence pack.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's just go back to our homepage. How do we get to the evidence pack?
Yep.
As I said before, every set of standards in the platform has this drop down menu.
Right.
So you get action plan, evidence pack, standards report. So I'm just clicking on the evidence pack.
Right.
So again, just where we're a bit more fleshed out with the aged care quality standards.
Yeah.
I want to point out one more thing with that evidence pack, because the evidence pack is a nice summary area for you and for Marie for that matter.
Yeah.
When we go, down to the bottom of this evidence pack
yeah.
area, we've got the supplementary comments here, but also what I want to point out is this area where it says generate evidence pack for review. If you click on save to download, it will create a point in time archive of your work against that set of standards. So in this case, someone on the 19th of June 2020, probably me at 10:25 a.m, clicked on save to download, and they created a point in time assessment report, that high level report that we looked at a second ago, the PDF document, but also it creates an evidence pack zip file. So if you've linked a whole lot of PDF documents or Word docs or whatever it might be, those are straight in an evidence pack zip file. And, Marie would be able to click on that evidence pack zip file if you'd created it. And then, she could immediately download those, that group of evidence documents. But you need to create the evidence pack zip file. This is the zip file just here. You need to click on save to download if you want to make that zip file available.
Don't need to do that for me because I can create my own evidence pack. So don't feel like that's something that you've got to remember to do for me. That's for your own purposes.
Coins change, mate.
There's a bit of background noise there, Vivian. Any other questions for James?
Yes, I have one, James. Emma from City of Marion. Hi. I have a question around something, and this has probably explained it to a degree, but I'm wondering why with each of the modules or each of the sections, like there's only one comment section at the bottom. What I found as I was going through with our staff members, it might be a question around, something about governance or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And each question you might have a comment for.
Yeah.
However, there's only one comment section down the bottom. And as the questions aren't numbered, it's difficult to kind of refer back as you're going through that. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that, and again, I'm not too sure whether you're doing the MAP self-assessment.
I am doing the MAP self-assessment.
So if you're doing the MAP self-assessment, the thing you need to be careful about writing comments in certain assessment modules is that same module, let's say it's around diversity or privacy, whatever it might be, will map across to multiple sets of standards. So you might say, now disability service, we do blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden that's appearing in the aged care quality standards. You think, I don't want that comment appearing in the aged care quality standards. So that's the sort of pros and cons of having, mapped self-assessments where your answers and your evidence are traveling across, to different sets of standards which have duplicated requirements, very similar requirements around privacy or, strategy or diversity or whatever it might be. So because we have those mapped assessment modules or mapped quizzes, mapped groups of questions, we deliberately put the comment section at a high level, sitting outside the quizzes, because the quizzes are mapping around, and you might find you get some very odd comments turning up in standards that you hadn't intended those comments to be for. So the comment section here is sort of high level, but I should point out we're sort of doing a bit of work around how comments can be added into the platform, because we think there's a more efficient way for qualitative commentary to be added within SPP. And one thing, for example, that we don't like, and you'll probably appreciate, with your question, Emma, is that, it makes more sense to be able to provide comments at the front end as an organisation while you're self-assessing, rather than at the back end in this summary evidence pack area.
Yeah, well, actually didn't even know that that was there. So I guess that was another part of my question is for people starting out, like this has been really interesting for me, but it's kind of, it's a bit of a shame because I'm at the end of the process now. This would have been great to have straight up. So I wonder for people that are on the earlier end of their process, do you offer training like what you've done today? Do you offer that to other groups?
We offer as much training as people want. So if anyone wants a webinar for themselves or for them and their colleagues, we're more than happy to offer that. And we do things like what we're doing today with Marie all the time.
Right. Yeah. That. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think that would have been really useful. Yeah, for a new user. I mean, I've worked out most of it kind of as I've gone, and your help team has been really great, but just having this overview is really useful.
Yeah.
3 years, Emma, 3 years goes quickly, mate.
I don't want to think about that, Marie. Let's just get this one done. However,
I think you'd be your interest anyway. That's
next
good.
time I'm going to be a whiz at it. This
You
time
are. You'll be a super user.
You know, this time's been the learning curve. Next time will be a breeze.
I've got a question from Carolyn.
Yep.
Oh, just James, you've been talking about a lot about people using the mapped version. Is there anything that's substantially different than the unmapped?
So one of the key things with SPP, what it tries to do with the cross mapping, is to assist organisations that have to comply with multiple standards. So the idea is, if you think about a theme like corporate governance, and obviously there's a couple of different moving parts when you talk about governance, but the point being, if your organisation takes a certain approach to governance, whether and let's say you have to meet the aged care quality standards, the NDIS practice standards, the Australian Service Excellence standards, or some combination of different standards, around the country, it kind of doesn't make great intuitive sense that you've got to completely, in a silo, show how you're meeting the corporate governance requirements in this set of standards, and then do the whole thing from scratch again in this set of standards, and do it again a third time in another set of standards. So the idea of the cross mapping is to say, if there's common governance related requirements across multiple sets of standards, let's get you to work through one set of governance related self-assessment questions, and in doing so you're knocking off those duplicated requirements in one.
I understand the purpose of it, but if an organisation is using the unmapped, because sometimes people may be working with staff members that have difficulty reading on a computer, need a paper copy, in which case working off the booklet becomes much easier. And they may be working with staff members that they may not even have proper, good internet to work with. So that once again, paper copy is your friend. Not my friend ever, but some people's friend. So I'm wondering, you talk about comments are here and comments are there, what have you, on the mapped version. Is it any different on the unmapped?
It's still probably, when it comes to comments, it's probably the same point. But the one thing I just want to point out, the way in which we've structured up the self-assessment in the unmapped version is we have just taken the ACES requirements word for word and converted each of those individual requirements into a self-assessment question. So if we just go into, the very first quiz under standard 1.1 strategic planning, or it's, requirement 1.1.1 around the roles and values, very simply, all we've done is we've just transposed that very first requirement into a one-line question, are the roles and values of the organisation clearly identified and communicated? So therefore, you've got one module with one question. And then if you wanted to add, some additional commentary in here, it is actually also possible to add in something here where we go, supplementary comment, and then we could type in, we do blah, 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 blah in relation to roles and values.
Okay, right here.
So
I will just say to Carolyn, in the mapped version, there are a lot more questions.
Correct.
Yeah. And in the unmapped version, though, if you complete the unmapped version, is that for compliance, or are there questions that are sort of left over for ACES that aren't covered because you've only done what maps with other standards?
No,
So-
the mapped version maps across a range of other accreditation products. The unmapped version is only mapped to service excellence.
Yep.
So is there one, from your point of view, well, this is more for Marie than for James, is there one that's better to use? I know the reason that we were thinking unmapped.
No, the only reason to use the mapped version is if you now or in the future intend to be accredited or use other sets of frameworks.
Okay. But James said this is one for you. I'm sorry, then I'll be quiet, everybody else. How do we know, does it map against all standards, or do we have a thing of which standards it actually maps to?
Ooh, how many of them, James, does Assess map to?
So our mapped self-assessment for ACES maps across to a huge number of standards, but not every single one. And let me just elaborate on that point a little bit further. Where you get a particular set of standards, like let's say the Rainbow Tick standards around providing, services to LGBTI customers, for example, or even like, let's say the National Principles for Child Safe Organisations. When you get a certain set of standards, which is very, very specific in its requirements, under the Child Safe standards, it's just every single indicator says, do you do this for children? Do you do that for children? Is your code of conduct written for children? It's so child specific, or the Rainbow Tick standards so LGBTI specific in the indicators. That doesn't lend itself to natural mapping against ACES, which is a much broader generic set of community services standards. They don't refer constantly to children in ACES. They don't refer to LGBTI. Yes, they might touch upon themes like diversity or the like, or there might be the odd reference to children. But these other sets of standards are very, very specific. So sometimes they just don't map. But when you're talking about some of the big ones like aged care, NDIS, ACES, the Victorian Human Services Standards, the Queensland Human Service Quality Framework, all these different things, those types of standards do map quite well to one another. They do have a lot of common themes that appear again and again.
So it sounds like where it's possible they are mapped, where there's some similarity in the requirements, the indicators, they do map.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. Last question for Vivian, if that's all right. I'll let you finish off your comment there, James, and then we'll hear the question for Vivian's team.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say offline, if anyone wanted to reach out to us and say, look, can you just help us out a little bit more so we can sort of understand how the mapping works between this standard and that standard, happy to sort of have a bit of a chat around that as well.
Fantastic.
Sorry, was it my question, did you just say?
Yes, please, mate.
So with a mapped version, I used the portal when we did the QAS standards. And when I went in just to have a look at it and refamiliarize myself with it, I was really unclear whether I should do mapped or unmapped, because the evidence that was put in for the QAS is obviously old now. So is it better to start fresh and go unmapped?
I would say if your evidence is really old, yes, there are merits in just starting afresh rather than trying to do a whole lot of edit and replacing very old evidence documents. It can get all a bit overwhelming. You might have so many evidence documents.
Exactly.
An inordinate amount of time thinking, should I keep this? Should I get rid of it? Do I have something good to replace this with? It might just be much simpler and easier to start off from scratch. With the question around mapped versus mapped, I just get back to the basic question that any organisation should ask itself is, do I have to meet multiple standards? If so, yes, kind of mapped probably makes good sense for me. That's going to make my life a bit easier. If, ACES, for example, is my main set of standards and I don't have to maybe comply with a whole host of other things, it might just be easier to work through that unmapped self-assessment. As you can see here, very simple, requirement by requirement.
One question.
Yep.
One question per indicator.
Yeah, exactly. But you would then want to refer to the underlying ACES evidence guide to familiarise yourself with the types of evidence that the official ACES evidence guide is suggesting, should be considered, for the Australian Service Excellence Standards. So that will help inform what types of things you might link into this particular question here.
Okay, I'm a little bit unclear as to why the questions are different on the mapped and unmapped version. And I apologise if someone's already asked this question.
No, that's a question. Many people get confused about that. As I said, the way in which the mapping works, in order to allow you to complete an assessment and then address multiple other standards, we're getting you to work through one set of questions.
Right.
Okay. And those are those are our assessment modules that you're working against.
Right.
And hence what we're doing is we're asking you to work through a series of, let's say, 6-8 questions around privacy.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you're addressing privacy in ASIS as well as NDIS. But we're not using exactly the same wording in ASIS and the NDIS. But we're covering off, you know, in enough depth to give us the comfort that, yes, the questions that we're asking are taking you on a bit of a journey around all the things you probably need to be thinking about in relation to privacy or diversity or, you know, whatever the thematic might be, strategy or, you know, operational planning or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
These are excellent questions, and I'm sorry if you do have others, but we always want to honour people's time commitment, and we promise to keep these meetings tight. So I would like to join with everyone in showing any kind of reaction to James that you would like to thank him and appreciate him and his colleague B for joining us today. And get you to stop sharing that screen now, James, so you can see everybody's appreciation on the big screen.
No problem.
There we are. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Here's my favourite, James. Yes,
Okay.
let's have a party. Let's have a BNG party.
I've got a feeling we've just about hijacked your whole session, so we should leave.
Yes, congratulations on doing that. That's not easy for people to do with me, but you are a VIP after all, James.
Okay. See you
Feel free
later.
to hang around and listen to us talk about internal auditing programs.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has got any follow-up questions, you know, you've got some confusion after, you know, on the back of everything we've talked about, because we covered quite a lot of different stuff, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to, you know, to go into more detail one-on-one.
Isn't it good to e-meet James so that that's easier? Right? So when you call up, you'll know who you're talking to now. I really appreciate your time, James. Feel free to hang around. Wanted to talk with the group today. Now, please, you know, you can go at any time. There's no rules.
Okay.
You don't even have to
We're
stay
jumping.
on.
Bye, Marie. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. I wanted to talk with you about internal auditing today because there's a connection with the need to undertake audits with quite a few of the indicators in the framework. And even though it's not explicit, I wanted to make you aware that system monitoring, and I call it check yourself before you wreck yourself. So if you can't remember anything else from today, just remember that. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Before we come along and assess your organisation, we think it's a good idea if you do it yourself. And you're doing that already with the way that you're preparing for your accreditation. However, we will, against some of the indicators, need to see evidence of what we call system monitoring. I'm just going to call it auditing, right? Checking. Checking what? What are you checking? You're checking that everything is in place the way that you intend it to be. Everything is in place the way that it must be. Now, when I say words like must, what do you think of? What do you think I'm saying? You must do that.
I'm thinking of legal obligations.
Exactly, Kay. I'm not really a must-do kind of person, right? I don't like to tell people what to do. But I tell you what, the legislation definitely tells you what you must do. And if you're not 100% compliant, it's not just a problem for me, your assessor, it's a problem for you, your organisation, because you're not legal, right? So what I've done is I have started along the trail of putting together a resource that I think will be super helpful in helping to make a connection with all of the must-do areas. All right, so I've got a couple of things to add to this, but this is the resource that I'll be sharing with you today. Now, internal auditing, evaluation, and survey tools are evidence of system monitoring. So you set up a system, the system is supposed to help you to make sure everything, everything is compliant, mostly with legislation, but sometimes with your own policies and procedures and the standards. So system monitoring is about checking that, yes, everything is compliant. So it asks the question, are you doing what you say you will do in your policies and procedures? And if I ask you that question, you said, oh, yes, we are. We definitely are. And I say, well, 100%. And you might say, oh, I think we're about 85%. And I'll say, well, you know, that means there's some areas where you may not be legal. So we've got to get to 100%. Are the outcomes expected being delivered? So as a service, you might do some system auditing, you might do some monitoring and checking to see that, well, we intended to deliver this, or we intended to deliver this many of these. Are we actually doing that? So it's checking your results or outcomes against your intention. Are you complying with the relevant standards, the legislation, the acts, the guidelines, the regulatory frameworks, all those things there for your sector, for your industry? And that's the biggest question there. That's where you could get into most trouble. And it has to be 100%. Probably 85% is not really acceptable, not when it comes to legislation anyway. All right, so 100% is acceptable with legislation. When you're moving towards practice standards or other standards such as service excellence, if you're at 85%, you'd celebrate that. So we're suggesting an internal audit program which brings together all the things you're probably already doing to monitor your systems, to monitor compliance with all the things that you want to do and that you must do. And I've got a list here of all the different ways that we probably are already auditing. So don't think, oh shit, I've got to go and put all this together. No, you don't. You have to think of the things you're already doing and maybe describe them now as a bit of an auditing program. So we might have a very well developed, mature internal audit program where we know all the system checks we do and they're on a schedule and we check them, we know when they're done and we know when they're behind. Great if you do. But if you don't, you've probably got these things here. You might have a fire safety audit, you might be doing WHS worksite inspections, you'd be doing some surveys, some evaluations, you might be trending and analysing, hopefully, things like incidents and complaints and feedback, because they're very, very good information for you about how your systems are performing. You might be doing exit interviews with staff and with clients to understand their experience against, you know, what you intended their experience to be. You definitely will be doing financial audits, organisational performance monitoring. You probably produce dashboard reports to show where you're up to with certain KPIs and other sorts of strategic goals that you're trying to achieve. Emergency drills is one way of actually checking that your emergency procedures are working. So when was the last time you had one of those? You know, those sorts of things there. And more. But what I've done helpfully for you, and I don't want to overwhelm you, I don't want you to think, oh my goodness, I've got to have all of this. But what I wanted to do was touch on some of the service excellence indicators where there might be a need for some auditing or some checking or some system monitoring. All right, so if I take a very, very obvious one here it says monitoring and evaluation of the governing body are undertaken. So the way that we might understand how the governing body are performing is to do a board performance evaluation. I've actually given you a nice link to one that I think is good there. I'll make sure that hyperlink works for you by the time I send it to you. Here's another one under policies and procedures. Documentation is subject to planned reviews to ensure it reflects and supports agreed work practices. So it's saying here that policy and procedures need to be reviewed. So I would put here that we're going to have a policy and procedure review schedule. We'll be able to check. We'll be able to see, has it all been done? What's another example? Let me go down here a bit further. Policies and procedures, privacy and confidentiality principles are consistent with the law. You'd have to be doing a client record audit occasionally to understand your level of compliance with the Privacy Act. Okay, so you'd have to be checking that all the information is being given to clients about their right to privacy and that they had signed consent or some way of indicating their consent to share their information. Let's go down a little bit further here. business-related incidents, accidents, adverse events, and near misses annually analysed regularly to identify trends for review and action. So the only way you could be understanding what that data is telling you is to do a bit of an audit and analyse for any trends. There's some where the word audit is quite explicit. Let me take you to work health and safety. Periodic audits and inspections verify compliance with policies and procedures. So it's saying there we will need to see that you have got some audits in place. Another one here is test and tag. All right, so that's an audit to make sure that your electrical equipment is safe. Okay, so what I've tried to put in here is some ideas about the checking mechanisms that might form part of an internal audit program. There's a new standard around diversity inclusion in version 8. And it says here the organisation measures its performance regarding the support for and promotion of diversity and inclusion. So it's sort of saying here that you've got a way of measuring how well you're doing. So might suggest that there are some targets that we look at, and we regularly assess how we're going with reaching those targets. Or it might be that we collect demographic data about the diversity groups that we're serving or that we're employing or working with, and we analyse that data. And one of the ones here that I ended up with is the service outcomes measures and indicators of performance are established to monitor outputs and outcomes. This is a key word now, isn't it? Because we're moving to outcome-based commissioning. So we'll have to be able to tell a story about the outcomes that we are achieving with our clients. So we'll have some key performance indicator reports or measures of success against the framework that we might be working to. We'll have strategic and business plan reviews. So we'll be having a look at how many of our strategic goals have we been able to achieve, in what time period, etc. So I suppose in a nutshell, it's all the information that you have in your organisation that tells you whether you're this much compliant with legislation, with policies, procedures, with standards, or this much compliant, or this much compliant. So you really would want to know, because if you're working towards 100% and your data tells you that you're at 60, you would know then the targeted work that you would have to do. So this is really good information for you to have about your organisation. Let me just stop sharing that there. I did hear a good saying recently. I'll finish off with this. What is it? Data is like a precious resource. You've got to find it, mine it, and refine it. All right. So data is a very, very precious resource. You've got to find it, mine it, and refine it. Okay, so what questions do you have, if anything, about the auditing side of things? The resources that I'm sharing with you this month that will be helpful when it comes to thinking about checking yourself before you wreck yourself are, let me just read out, these are fabulous. I am sending you the ACNC self-evaluation for charities, and you will have also seen from James's talk that the ACNC governance standards are on the portal, so you can go and have a look at those and see how you might be meeting those. I'm going to send you the Highwire site inspection audit tool. So when we come out to your site and we have got our assessor goggles on, I've given you a list of all of the things that we're going to be looking for. Now, if Margie and Kath are still with us from Catholic Care Wilcannia Forbes, they will know how very diligent we are when we walk around with our checklist. That's the time when I put my glasses down my nose and I go, let's show me this, let's have a look at that, where are you hiding that? Right, so we're quite thorough when we do our site inspection, because it's not just checking that you're aligning yourself with the service excellence standards, but some things are legislated, such as we're looking at fire extinguishers and we're looking at exit lighting and we're looking at space and trip hazards and all sorts of things. So I'm going to send you that. And I'm going to send you our employee file audit checklist as well. So you can check yourself against the requirements of the Fair Work legislation and other sorts of things that should be in the HR files. If you're keeping the sorts of things that you should be keeping, such as the things in the service exit standards and the things that you must be keeping in line with the relevant legislation. So how does that sound? And I'm also putting some links into that Word document that I showed you before. I'm going to put some links in there to other little audit tools that I've used. I've got an Aboriginal inclusion audit tool that I've used that's produced by NADA, which is the National Aboriginal Drug and Alcohol Organisation. They've got a very good Aboriginal inclusion tool that I've been using. Yeah, so what are you saying to me in the chat there? I don't like to miss anything. Yes, yes, I will add you to the distribution list. Yes, I will send you those documents today, Emma. Though if you put anything else on your portal there, I will come after you. Lisa says, thank you so much.
I need to locate all the fire extinguishers.
Oh yeah, go and locate all the fire extinguishers. I'll find them. I'm trained to find them. All right. Yes, we'll be loading those resources into the new website section, so you'll be able to find them and share them, take them, change them, use them, whatever you want to do with them. But we're really enjoying our opportunity to work with you all. Hello, Rana. I didn't see you pop in there before. Nice to see you. And we will have another meeting in a month. Share the recording with anyone that you would like to. I thought James's session was really helpful. 90% of what he told us, I did not know. So I just want to say if I've been helping anybody with the portal, I feel like I've been.
That's so encouraging
limited.
to hear that. I feel much better about mine.
I know. Yeah, and he's a good friend to have. He's a director at BNG, so he's been with it since the start. So it's pretty amazing.
That was a good session. Thank you.
All right, a good session. That's lovely. Emma, good luck with your assessment next week. Everybody's feeling like they want to send you some good feelings.
Thank you.
Let's all finish off. I love it when everybody waves. You know what I'm like. I like to see people moving and being generally animated and happy. I'll see you in a month, if not before. I'm coming to wherever you are. And if there's any paperwork, any part of the process that I have not kept up with, please send me an email because I'm in the zone right now. I can do things that you need me to do.
Thank you. See you all.
Thank you.
Lovely to see everybody.
Thanks, Marie.
See you in a month.
Thanks, Kath. Good to see you. Bye, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sonia. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Kay.
Bye,
See you soon.
Thank you.
Oh, let's get Amina and Lavika.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.